This is Rebecca from ChemKnits, and in today's episode of Dyepot Weekly, I thought that we would hand paint 100 grams of a nylon superwash wool sock yarn using Kool-Aid and foam brushes to create a spooky colorway. My plan today is to do a Halloween colorway, and I want to do a kind of blackish or brown, a more purple, orange, and green. There is a punch I like to make for Halloween parties that I use orange and grape Kool-Aid to actually make it look like a black brew. And so I'm curious what color that will end up looking like on yarn. I already showed you the Kool-Aid flavors that we are going to use, and this time I am going to dissolve each of these cups in 1/3 of a cup of water. This is not quite as concentrated as I did when I dyed using sponge brushes with Lucas. There I used 2 or 3 packets to 1/8 of a cup, but I need the colors to spread out a little further. And in this last one, since I think this is the color I'm going to use the most of, this brownish one, I'm going to add 2/3 of a cup of water. And the foam brushes that I have today are a little wider than the ones I used last time. I don't know how well they'll work to mix up. Okay, maybe not that well. I'm going to go back to using a fork. But yeah, they're wider than the ones I got last time, not for really any particular reason except for the fact that I didn't pay a ton of attention when I bought the brushes. I do plan on using 1 brush per color today because I want to make sure that I can change colors quickly, and I think that that will be the easiest way to do it. Okay, let's start with this dark color over here and see. Ooh, that is definitely a brown. Yeah, I will need to go over these again on the back side. But I really liked those rainbow stripes that I created last time. So my plan is to kind of do some little stripes all around in this dark color. And then in between it, I'm going to fill it in with the green, the purple, and the orange. And I think that this would be a fun Halloween-y colorway. But I don't think you can really see, but what's kind of fun about this brown right now is that it's breaking. And it's breaking almost until it looks like green and orange almost. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, and you can decide to do this as you go or later on to like make sure to like add some color to the other side, so you get good penetration through the whole skein, color penetration. But it is also, I guess, as a lot of these things are, a personal preference, and you could choose to let there be color just showing up on one edge and not the rest. I am going to continue painting these dark stripes all the way around this skein, and yeah, then I will come back and we can start adding some of the other colors. But I really like using this sponge brush as an application method. I think that it's, you know, a nice controlled way to do it. I wanted to zoom in a bit so you could see the breaking here. I think that using this brown alone and doing these stripes, you could get something really, really cool. but I am planning to add the other colors in the middle in just a moment. The main reason why dyeing with Kool-Aid is fun is that it already has citric acid in it, so you don't need to worry about adding an acid source. It smells good, and it comes in a lot of vibrant colors. It is, especially with the number of packets we're using today, it would be a lot more cost effective for you to do this with food coloring and vinegar. You would have a little more control over the shades that you get. But since I'm thinking about Halloween, I wanted it to smell sweet and artificial in here. So now I'm going to start adding these other colors in between each of these stripes. And I haven't quite decided if I want to go through and do, you know, green, orange, purple in order, or how I quite want to do it. But I'll start off doing one stripe of each color. But oh, already that green is so vibrant. This is the green apple Kool-Aid, which I recently found at my local store. I found that with the superwash wool nylon blend that the colors bind extremely quickly. And so a lot of times with 100% wool, I can move color around just by squeezing the fibers and kind of squishing it through. But this superwash, I think it's 75% superwash wool, 25% nylon. Since the colors bind so quickly, I find that I need to actually physically apply more of the dye. Let's see about, all right, so this purple is still pretty grayish. I think because it has red number 40 in it, and that red is not as vibrant as red number 3, which is much more of a pink. And you can see that by doing both sides, there is still, I guess, needs some coverage in towards the center, but I will go back around towards the end and add color as needed. Okay, I think this is the way I'm going to do it. And I'll plan out this colorway a bit. I'm going to do orange in every other one of these blank spaces and then alternate between the green and the purple. Uh-oh. I didn't plan this out quite right, did I? See, this is where if I'd been planning, then I could have made sure. Well, we'll deal with that in a second, and we'll see how close we get. Okay, so that one will be purple, which means this one will be green. Purple, then green. Purple, then green. Purple, then... Okay, so that wants to be green again. Watch me sit and think about this a little too hard. Okay, I think instead of having 2 purples, I'm going to do 2 greens because I like the green a bit better than the purple. So this isn't going to be perfect, but that is quite all right. I think that this will still be a very exciting colorway. All right, that's my plan. This feels very Halloween-y, doesn't it? Yeah, I really like using these sponge brushes. I'm picking it up a bit right now, but I think that it's a lot, I found that with syringes it's a lot harder to get patches of color quite this narrow. So I am very excited by this technique. Let's see, okay. Yeah, these, it binds so fast to the nylon. The browns actually did a pretty good job. Ooh, you want to see some cool breaking? I think I spilled some of the purple I made, and look at those splotches on the paper towel. It's always an easy way to see if something will break by looking at the paper towel, putting the color on a paper towel and seeing if the colors separate. In chemistry, there is a technique to help you determine how many compounds are in solution, and it's an analytical technique you can use called paper chromatography, where you have, the paper's been treated with a chemical, but you can put drops of your mixture on there and you'll see things separate based on, in some cases it's just size, in some places it's sometimes it's based on charge, depending on the kind of paper that you use. So I like to think about colors breaking on yarn kind of like yarn chromatography. But I'm a little bit of a chemistry nerd. Lucas is napping right now, which is why he's not next to me painting his own yarn. He might be a little disappointed when he discovers that I was doing this without him. The kid really likes playing ChemKnits video, and he likes watching himself back on the replays. Now, one thing I'll say about hand painting yarn versus kettle dyeing or dip dyeing is that it takes a lot longer. If you watched the Gatorade dip dyeing experiment, you might remember that that just went super fast. But the hand painting is a bit more almost intimate feeling, because you get a lot more control, but you are doing a lot more handling of the fibers, and so it's kind of a nice feeling. I'm not sure if there are any Kool-Aids that have red number 3, which is that bright magenta that we see in Wilton's Violet. That would be handy. Oh, I never mentioned that I did pre-soak this yarn before I started. I pre-soaked it overnight in just some room temperature water with nothing added to it. But I did put it through my salad spinner before starting to remove as much of the liquid as possible, so that way I would be able to add back in as much liquid as possible. I am really kind of digging this dusty purple. It doesn't really show up very well against the brown, although it might show up better once it's dried, but I think that it complements things nicely and is more, because the blue and ice blue raspberry lemonade is very bright and vibrant. I would say it's equivalent to what you can find in McCormick's neon blue versus standard blue food coloring. Oh, that's the brown. And some more. But I am adding a lot of liquid in here to this yarn. I guess total it's only a cup and a third. And usually I would say, well, okay, I guess it's the worsted weight yarn, which is thicker and a little more sponge-like. Normally I would say 2 cups of liquid is sufficient for dyeing yarn. But maybe I didn't remove quite as much of the water as I thought. So now I am going through and checking my coverage of color and seeing if there's any spots where I would like to add some more dye. But I'm really excited with this nice spooky colorway. So even though, the video is coming out today, which is Halloween, but I'm filming this in advance, and I have yet to make Halloween costumes for myself and the boys. But if you follow along my blog at ChemKnits.com, you can see some of the other crafting adventures that I do. I really like making Halloween costumes a lot. Okay, let's use a little more green. How are we over here? Aha, we got some white. See how fast the color binds on this nylon yarn? I do have plans to do an experiment where I'm going to use superwash wool and compare that directly to untreated wool, and that uses the same fiber, so that way I can see side by side how they behave differently. This was an experiment that was requested, but given the differences I've been noticing myself between this stock yarn and the 100% wool yarn I like to use, I am very curious. Alright, so now I'm going to wipe up my workspace and remove some of the excess dye. And I had already placed plastic wrap onto my work surface, which doubles to protect the work surface and is helpful to wrap up the yarn after we're done hand painting it. Alright, now I am going to place this in a microwave safe bowl and microwave it in 2-minute intervals in the microwave, probably for a total of about 4 minutes, or until it feels really hot to the touch.
Ah, that yarn looks beautiful.
Thank you, Lucas. You'll see that there's some liquid that came out of this jelly roll, but it has very little color in it. So most of the color is in our spooky Halloween yarn. This is super hot to touch, so I'm going to stop touching it. I microwaved it for a total of 4 minutes, and I now have to let it cool completely before we can unwrap it and look at these colors. Alright, here is our spooky jelly roll. Let's see what we got.
Yeah.
Alright. Wow, hey, that purple shows up a little more than I expected. Oh, that's really, really fun. Can you believe that we got these colors with Kool-Aid? Alright, so we used a lot of packets of Kool-Aid in this video. So that's why the water is a bit cloudy, because there are a lot of chemicals beyond just the food coloring and citric acid in Kool-Aid packets. So I'm now going to wash this with some dish soap, and I'm not sure if this is looking green from the soap or if a little bit of green is coming out of the yarn, but either way we will Wash this and rinse this until the water runs clear. If some of the green is leaking out, then it might just need a handful of more rinses. And then I will come back to show you the finished dry yarn. Here we have our hand-painted Halloween colorway. You'll find that there's some areas where the purple didn't penetrate as much. And one other thing you might not realize is that even after a lot of washing, this smells a lot like Kool-Aid. I don't think I have ever used this many Kool-Aid packets on one skein of yarn before. So if you aren't into the smell of Kool-Aid, then you might prefer to do this with food coloring and vinegar. And you can just pre-soak your yarn in vinegar ahead of time. But I am very excited with these vibrant colors. I'm glad that there's more contrast between the purple and brown than there was when the yarn was wet. You know, I wish that the brown was a bit darker, but it's still a gorgeous kind of chestnut brown. So I think that it's a really, really fun color. And then this yarn is perfect for October. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Dyepot Weekly. I hope you enjoy this technique of using foam sponges to hand paint yarn. I think it's a really nice way to add dye to the yarn in a controlled manner, and we got some beautiful short sections of color using this technique. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and make sure you subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials channel to see more fun dyeing episodes.